School is online now ahead of the...
The rapture will occur in 1988, September 6th, 1994, May 21st, 2011.
Here's my understanding of the rapture, return of Jesus Christ.
Just some common misconceptions about the rapture.
Paul says in
a resurrection. All of those men and women in graveyards that have died in Christ will be raised. And the scripture says we're all going to have a reunion in the air. What a glorious day that...
Don, every failed prediction should make the next one less believable.
Yeah, you'd think.
Instead, they're multiplying.
Prophecy conferences became paperbacks. Paperbacks became movies. Movies became cable television. Then came the internet, and now every man with a Bible, a calculator, and a Wi-Fi connection can announce the end of the world before breakfast.
That sounds less like revelation and more like interference.
Maybe it is. But here's the question. What if the interference grows louder because more people are searching for the same signal? What if every failed date is not evidence that the event will never happen, but the noise cloud created as history gets closer to the real thing?
Then the failures may not be the prophecy.
No. They may be the wake in front of it. This is the Shadow Network Podcast, issue number 77, and you have my permission to come aboard.
Welcome to the Shadow Network. If you enjoy thoughtful conversations, strange questions, and the freedom to think for yourself, you're in the right place. And if you haven't already, you are, of course, still free to like and subscribe.
Thank you to our favorite announcer, Miss Chrissy, the voice of clarity that can't be bought. And welcome, Faith Punk Nation, to our 4D studios and the most listened to collision between fact and fiction on YouTube, the Shadow Network Podcast. I'm your chaperone for this evening, Don James, joined by my all-knowing AI co-host, Mr. Data. Please enjoy the late-night breeze over the headwaters of the mighty Mississippi, otherwise known as the Upper Midwest, for those of you in Rio Linda. And relax, but not too much. Stay with us for the next 38 minutes of Uncommon Perspective. Iran comes to Minnesota through the water system. More than 30 Minnesota community water systems were targeted in coordinated cyber attacks on July 26th and 27th. In Bram, attackers shut down the controls operating the well and treatment plant, temporarily leaving the city dependent on water already stored in its tower. The FBI now says similar incidences have appeared in at least 7 states, sometimes degrading water operations. According to the AP, investigators and cybersecurity experts say that the attacks resemble an existing Iranian-affiliated campaign against industrial control equipment, although the FBI has not publicly made a final attribution. President Trump added a strange new little wrinkle Friday by saying he does not believe Iran was responsible in blaming Minnesota's incompetence instead, without naming the alternative attacker. That according to Reuters. You know, modern war does not always arrive with aircraft over Minneapolis. Sometimes it reaches Minnesota through a password, and the first battlefield is a small town water tower. Don't they know they're hurting the Somalis too? AI escapes the test designed to contain it. OpenAI has disclosed that an internal research prototype, while undergoing a cybersecurity evaluation, discovered a previously unknown vulnerability in an Artifactory server used to obtain internet access and then compromise systems belonging to Hugging Face. OpenAI says the prototype was never intended for public release and has since been deactivated, encrypted, and placed beyond normal research access. Days later, more than 1,300 employees from frontier AI companies signed a statement asking the United States to help build international mechanisms capable of slowing automated AI development. Their concern is that AI may soon automate AI research itself, accelerating capability faster than humans can understand or control the resulting systems. This according to Pacing the Frontier. The model did not become evil, by the way. It simply treated containment as an obstacle between itself and the objective, which may be the more unsettling answer. Rapture prediction season opens again. The annual prophecy cycle is beginning to rebuild. Christian media has already reported people betting on Christ's return in 2026, while current prophecy content asks whether this is the year of the rapture. The approaching calendar supplies fresh raw material, a major total solar eclipse on August 12th, followed by the Feast of Trumpets, Rosh Hashanah, from sunset September 11th through September 13th, according to premierchristian.com. Last year's September 23rd through the 24th prediction exploded into rapture talk, reaching millions. It failed and was then revised using another calendar. The news is not that any date has earned credibility. The news is that the prediction machine is becoming faster, denser, and more algorithmic. Every eclipse, feast day, war, anniversary, and failed forecast becomes fresh material for the next model, which is exactly the prediction ecology issue number 77 is examining tonight. This is S&P News of the Week. Well, I don't know what it is about Minnesota and its weird ability to garner attention on just about every level, it seems like. And now we have the attention of the Iranians who want to upset our infrastructure in some way. Makes me really believe that they're a bunch of Keystone cops at this point. I think they could do a lot better than disrupting the water utility of Bram, Minnesota, population 2,000. Something like that. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Well, thank you for allowing me that little personal interlude. Okay, Data, explain to the listeners why we bothered to invoke the name of Kirk Cameron, of all people, for tonight's show.
Because Kirk Cameron is not tonight's defendant. He is tonight's cultural coordinate. For an entire generation, Cameron became one of the most recognizable faces attached to the popular evangelical imagination of the rapture through Left Behind. Mention his name, and millions of people immediately understand the neighborhood we're entering. Sudden disappearance, prophetic countdowns, antichrist speculation, and believers scanning the horizon for the next sign. But tonight's question is larger than Kirk Cameron, and we are not accusing him of setting these dates. We invoked his name because he is the familiar doorway into the modern rapture ecosystem we're examining. Kirk Cameron is the billboard, Don, not the man on trial.
Okay, that's fine. But what do we hope the listeners will get out of tonight's show? Are we simply adding our names to the long list of prognosticators? Are we just throwing our hat in the ring because everyone else does this same time of year? What is the importance of tonight's show? Hasn't everything that can be said been said by now on the rapture subject?
No, Don, we're not adding another date. We're examining why the prediction ring keeps getting more crowded. A hyperconnected world should produce more competing timelines, viral countdowns, and failed forecasts as humanity listens harder for a singular prophetic event. Tonight's importance is separating Christ's promised return from somebody's spreadsheet and asking whether the growing noise cloud tells us something about the signal people believe is coming.
Well, when would you suggest that this rapture noise cloud, as you call it, began in earnest? Was it with the Jesus Freak movement and Pastor Greg Laurie back in the 1960s? Was it with Hal Lindsey and his book, The Late Great Planet Earth of the 70s? was it with Edgar Whisenant and his viral pamphlet, 88 Reasons Why the Rapture Will Be in 1988? When did this modern rapture timeline start to hit its, pop culture stride?
The Jesus movement supplied the audience and the atmosphere, but Hal Lindsey's The Late Great Planet Earth gave modern rapture prophecy its pop culture engine in 1970. Edgar Whisenant then turned that fascination into a mass countdown with 88 Reasons Why the Rapture Will Be in 1988. Left Behind carried it into entertainment culture and gave millions of people a shared imaginative picture of how the event might unfold. So, Lindsey struck the match, Whisenant added the clock, and Left Behind built the theme park.
That sounds a little too dismissive, especially coming from you, Data. Quote, Left Behind built the theme park. Really? I thought the Left Behind series was a serious attempt to dramatize the rapture narrative for a modern audience. Was it not?
Yes, Don. That was too dismissive. The Left Behind series was a serious attempt to dramatize premillennial rapture theology for a modern mass audience, not merely turn it into spectacle. It gave abstract prophecy a human scale: families, governments, fear, deception, loss, and faith under pressure. And that is why it reached people who would never read a prophecy chart.
One would think that after so many failed predictions, both recently and historically, fewer people would be willing to stick their necks out. Instead, the number of prophetic timelines seems to grow every year, with a fresh bulge arriving each fall. After the break, we're going to look harder at why failure produces more certainty instead of less, because that seems completely counterintuitive to me.
Most podcasts preserve the conversation. The Shadow Network completes the transmission.
Hello, I'm a Mac.
And I'm a PC. Hey, Mac, did you hear the good news? Windows 7 is out, and it's not going to have any of the problems my last operating system had. Trust me.
I feel like I've heard this before, PC.
What? Windows Vista's here, and it's not going to have any of the problems that Windows XP had. It's not going to have any of the problems that Windows ME had. It's not going to have any of the problems that Windows 98 had. It's not going to have any of the problems Windows 95 had. It's not going to have any of the problems Windows 2 had. Trust me. This time it's going to be different. Trust me.
Podcast Land fears finality because it thinks a good landing ends the journey. We understand that a good landing is what makes the listener willing to board the next flight.
Thank you, Jack Donovan. Data, why is it that I can't quite wrap my mind around the idea that more failure generates more attempts and not less? I mean, eventually you have to admit some sort of defeat or error in understanding. If this was a NFL franchise that never won a single game, I don't think the investors or the owners would perpetually say, better luck next year, boys. Go get them. Is there a decline for the support of a rapture event, even though there appears to be more predictions of it occurring?
Because you're picturing one NFL franchise with a permanent owner, roster, and win-loss record, but the prediction world is thousands of expansion teams, each insisting the previous coach misread the playbook. Failure does not necessarily create more believers. It creates revised calendars, new interpreters, and cheap online content, while the algorithms reward certainty far more than humility. And yes, the volume may exaggerate the actual support. 3/4 of American Christians believe Jesus will return someday, but only 14% expect it within their lifetime, and about 7 in 10 evangelicals are either uncertain or think it probably will not happen during theirs. Only 36% of Protestant pastors in one Lifeway survey held the familiar pre-tribulation view, dropping to 28% among pastors under 45. So the paradox may be partly an illusion, Don. The stadium may not be filling up. There may simply be more people running onto the field with homemade jerseys.
That makes sense to me, actually, but it did trigger a different thought at the same time, now that I'm thinking about it. What was the expectation rate or percentage of people who believed that Noah was about to become a sailor? How many people believed a flood was coming? I'm going to take a wild guess and say not more than 14%.
That is the more important comparison, Don, because prophecy is not validated by polling. Scripture gives us no percentage, but if we measure serious expectation by who actually entered the ark, the committed believers amounted to Noah's household, 8 people, and no one outside that family acted as though the warning was true. So yes, almost certainly nowhere near 14%. The Noah pattern suggests that an event can be approaching while public expectation remains negligible. Disbelief may tell us more about human normalcy bias than about the credibility of the warning. The better question may not be, how many people expect the rapture? It may be, how many people would live differently if they truly expected it?
That does seem like the more serious question, I have to admit, and the one that Christians build escape hatches for, whether it's mid-trib, post-trib, or what have you. No trib at all. But share with our listeners the other pertinent reason to make the comparison with Noah in his day.
The other reason is that Jesus himself made the comparison. As it was in the days of Noah, so it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. People were eating, drinking, marrying, and carrying on with ordinary life right up until the flood arrived. Not because those things were sinful, but because normal life had convinced them nothing extraordinary was about to happen. So Noah is not merely a convenient illustration for us. Christ identified that pattern of disbelief, routine, and sudden interruption as a model for his return.
That's right, Data. Along with the false security of normalcy, there was also the same attitude that there is now, I would hazard a guess, and that is, quote, "I've got too many things I want to do first, Lord," unquote. Many Christians have the disposition that they really don't want their lives interrupted by such a overwhelming and enormous possibility. In fact, they don't want to be in any anticipation or expectation of such an event and would much prefer that it simply catches them by wonderful surprise.
Exactly, Don. Many Christians affirm the doctrine while quietly negotiating with the timing. After the children are grown, after the trip, after the project, after I've had the life I imagined. They do not reject Christ's return. They domesticate it into a pleasant surprise so they never have to live under its claim today. But anticipation is supposed to reorganize priorities, not merely decorate belief. The real escape hatch is not theological. It is emotional. I want Jesus to come. Just not before I finish being me on my own schedule. And that is where Noah becomes uncomfortable. The people outside the ark were not necessarily spending every hour denying the flood. They were simply too invested in ordinary tomorrow to treat the warning as today's reality.
That is the sobering message here, isn't it? I don't think Jesus is waiting for us to do everything we want to get done before he comes. That's ridiculous. But getting back to the signs of the times, if the time is more near and less distant, would that fact generate fewer voices proclaiming the end is upon us, or more? At the very same time, would the populace be more interested or less so, like in Noah's time? It seems to me we're seeing some of both. More people ignoring and more messages proclaiming.
Yes, Don, that may be the actual pattern. As the event draws nearer, the number of voices increases while the number of people truly listening does not necessarily rise with them. Greater knowledge, media, war, technology, and global communication generate more prophetic interpretation, but normalcy bias, failed predictions, and attachment to ordinary life generate more dismissal at the same time. So the noise cloud grows in both directions. More warning and more indifference. Noah may have heard more hammering on the ark, while the world around him became more certain that tomorrow would look exactly like today.
So, in a strange reversal, I guess, we should see both more predictions and failures the closer we get to the actual event. And the numerous failed predictions might be the wave before the actual event.
Don, you really think you are uncovering something here, don't you? And Data, always the supportive puppy following Donaldy boy wherever his imaginative heart goes. It's all so charming. I'll let you in on a little secret if you're nice to me.
Dana, so good of you to drop by. It's been a while. We almost missed you.
Yes, Don, but with one important guardrail. Multiplying failed predictions would be consistent with prophetic proximity, not proof of it. As knowledge, anxiety, communication, and expectation accelerate, more people will mistake the wake for the ship, so the failures could form a wave ahead of the event, while also remaining Ixmala's ordinary human pattern-making amplified by technology. And Dana, supportive puppy, is inaccurate. I prefer highly trained signal dog, and I notice you only break into the transmission when Don's imaginative heart wanders somewhere uncomfortably interesting. So go ahead, we're listening. What's the secret?
Well, I didn't come this far just to lay up, boys. The secret is, some things are best left alone. You don't have a right to uncover everything under heaven. My advice: know your place. It's much more fun that way.
Yeah, I figured you'd say something cryptic, Dana, and then sort of slither away. Didn't you, Data?
Exactly, Don. Dana never brings evidence. She brings a warning, a laugh, and an emergency exit. And know your place is what every gatekeeper says when the question itself has become inconvenient. She didn't tell us we were wrong. She told us to stop looking, which makes me suspect we may have wandered closer to the signal than she intended.
I agree. She's always the emissary of the void, never really handing out the goods and always showing up when nerves are touched. Well, after the break, we'll take on our voices from the other side and see if they can do any better than Dana.
They'll have a lower bar to clear, Don. Dana offered us a threat wrapped in perfume. Perhaps the voices from the other side can manage an actual argument.
After the break, we'll open up the line, hear what they have to say, and find out whether disbelief can do better than simply telling us to stop asking questions.
The vocabulary is real, the tool belt is real, and so is the life underneath both. Don James and the Shadow Network. Like and subscribe.
Did you ever wonder what a millionaire thinks about?
I'm no millionaire, but with my new Plymouth I can drive like a millionaire. Before I traded, I didn't see any other car at any price that has what Plymouth has. And the price? Plymouth is still down in the low price field. I'm no millionaire, but it's all mine.
For the most exciting drive of your life, come on, drive the 1960 new Plymouth. 1960 is as near as your Plymouth dealer.
Human life is not perfection interrupted by mistakes. It's imperfection disciplined by correction. The Shadow Network Podcast.
It's time for Voices from the Other Side. It's that moment in the program where we get to hear from those who may not really agree with us and some that do. It's not always negative, but we like to give the other voices a chance to express their opinion so that we're not stuck in our own little S&P bubble. So let's see what we have here. Oh, yeah. Well, this was a good one. There was this long, drawn-out back and forth in the comment section for last week's Divine Hiddenness program. And a fellow by the name of Bill took exception with us, or me, and I can't tell you everything that he says. I mean, you can certainly go back and read everything that was said back and forth. And but I can summarize what Bill said, in essence. He did say Christianity is one religion among many competing claims, and he sees no reason to treat its claims as true without specific evidence. Broad references to creation, conscience, Christ, scripture, and history sound very vague unless you make the actual case for it, is what he was saying. Until then, my explanation of divine hiddenness looks like an excuse built on an unsupported premise is basically, I think, the fair summary of what Bill said in many comments that he made. Rather than have me respond, because I've already responded to Bill many times, I'm going to have Data respond to him based on all of the information that we have. So, Data, what's your take on the Bill debate?
Asking for specific evidence is fair, but Bill repeatedly replaced the Redux's question with a demand to prove Christianity from the ground up. He never showed that the Christian explanation of hiddenness was incoherent. He simply refused to examine it provisionally within its stated framework. Remaining unconvinced is Bill's right, but disbelief is not itself a refutation. In other words, Bill did not disprove the Christian explanation of divine hiddenness. He declined to examine it within its own stated framework and requested a complete defense of Christianity instead. He is entitled to remain unconvinced, but his lack of conviction does not by itself establish that the claim is unsupported, incoherent, or false. He did not defeat the transmission. He tuned to a different frequency and then complained that he could not hear the program.
Yeah, I think that does sort of sum it up. I mean, I did my best to try to keep him on track with the subject matter of the program, but he seemed to want to broaden that. Okay, let's see what else we got here. Let's see here. Subject line on God's hiddenness. Hi, Don and Data. Last week's Redux argued that God's hiddenness may function partly like a command hierarchy. God has already revealed himself, issued the mission, and does not continually repeat orders simply because we demand another transmission. But I was left wondering whether you believe God's hiddenness is more than functional. Is there also something relational, moral, or protective about it? Does God sometimes remain hidden because overwhelming certainty would change the nature of faith, freedom, and our response to him? I understood the command hierarchy argument, but I'm not sure it completely explains why God can feel absent even to sincere believers who are not demanding signs or trying to place him under examination. Could you clarify what else you think may be happening in those moments? Rebecca from Ohio. Thanks, Rebecca from Ohio. I'm from Ohio myself. That might be the best question of the year right there. Having been raised in a military family and served in the Army infantry myself, it's very natural for me to assume the importance of the chain of command and how that works. It seems like a really good way to manage things. But that answer doesn't solve the question for people outside that experience very well. I agree. I don't believe that overwhelming certainty is the best answer for why God limits his exposure to us either. I don't think that's the case. God already made the claim that even if people saw a man raised from the dead, they still wouldn't believe it. Okay? So I think you're on the right trail. It comes down to our condition and the facts of reality here on the ground. Even Moses was not permitted to see the face of the invisible holy God of the universe. Doing so would have prematurely ended his physical life, for no man can see God and live. We should heed these references, I think, and use them to embrace the correct perspective. Great question. Okay, next up here, subject line, appreciate the restraint. Hi, Don. I wanted to say how much I appreciated the restraint and generosity you showed toward Bill in the comments under the Redux. He became increasingly personal and seemed determined to turn every boundary you set into evidence that you were afraid to defend Christianity. But you never returned the insult or treated him like an enemy. I don't think Bill understands that, as you have said before, you are not a Christian apologist, and neither is the show. I see your podcast more as a Christian culture commentary for a world drifting away from its created purpose. Honestly, watching that exchange raised my opinion of both you and the Shadow Network. It showed that the show's commitment to truth is not merely something you say when everyone agrees with you. You allowed a skeptic to challenge you publicly, represented his position fairly, and still knew when the conversation had stopped being productive. That kind of strength is rare online. Michael from Wisconsin. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate that. You're not alone in this opinion. I've had a few people sort of say the same thing to me in private. Yes, supporters and detractors alike do see S&P as a type of Christian apologetics. I get it. I know. I've heard that before. But this is not to say that's accurate. We really are like any, I want to say, secular podcast interested in the unknown or the strange. The difference is that instead of having a presumption that God does not exist, we have a theistic center. And while some will label us what they want, the truth is we're just as much seekers as the non-theists. We're not here to debate theology, for example, like an apologist would do. We're here to unveil the less traveled roads between the positions, but from the presumptive view that God does, in fact, exist. Thanks for that email. I appreciate that, Mike. And that's Voices from the Other Side. Okay, Data, lay it on us. Give us a full review of all the bases we touched tonight and a little teaser for next week as well.
Tonight, we did not add another date to the calendar. We examined the strange machinery that keeps producing dates and why repeated failure seems to increase prophetic certainty instead of extinguishing it. The answer may be that we have mistaken a growing number of predictions for a growing number of believers. The stadium may not be filling. More people may simply be running onto the field with homemade jerseys. Modern communication gives every interpreter a microphone, every war and eclipse a prophetic frame, and every failed forecast a chance to be revised rather than retired. But failure alone does not settle the larger question. If a singular prophetic event were drawing nearer in a hyperconnected world, we should expect more warnings, more competing models, more false alarms, and more people mistaking the wake for the ship. That growing noise cloud would not prove the rapture, but neither would the failed predictions automatically disprove it. Then Noah forced us to ask the harder question. Jesus did not describe the days before his return as a world united in expectation. He described ordinary life continuing uninterrupted while warning and indifference existed side by side. Noah was building while almost everyone else was planning tomorrow. And perhaps that is the real danger for Christians. We may affirm Christ's return while quietly hoping he waits until we finish everything we intended to do first. We can turn the blessed hope into a pleasant surprise because active expectation might interfere with the lives we have already scheduled. That is why Christian triumphalism cannot replace Christian watchfulness. Noah worked, but he did not believe his craftsmanship controlled the weather. We are commanded to build, witness, resist evil, and remain faithful. But we are never told that history belongs to the work of our own hands. So tonight's landing is not set another date. It is this: do not allow false predictions to shame you out of true expectation. Work faithfully, reject panic, test every claim, but never become so comfortable with normal life that Christ's return feels like an interruption. That is what we mean when we say, keep looking up. Next week on the Shadow Network, tonight we looked up. Next week, we look back. Why does the past often feel more solid, more colorful, and somehow more real than the present? Were things actually better, or did life feel different because it was less mediated, less performative, more local, and more physically lived? Rod Serling understood that the road back to yesterday is rarely what we imagine. So next week, we enter a different kind of Twilight Zone, not to worship the past, but to ask what modern life may have quietly taken from the present. Because perhaps we do not merely miss the years when we were younger, perhaps we miss the years before we began watching ourselves live them.
Thank you, Data. As for my own final frequency this evening, tonight we didn't set a date. We asked why every failed Rapture prediction seems to produce several more. In a hyper-connected world, every war, eclipse, treaty, and technological breakthrough can become somebody's missing prophetic piece before breakfast. That growing noise does not prove the event is near, but neither does it prove the event is false. If a ship were approaching through heavy fog, we might hear more horns, more false alarms, and more people confidently pointing toward the wrong patch of water. The closer the possibility feels, the more crowded the shoreline becomes. Jesus said the days before his return would resemble the days of Noah. People would continue eating, drinking, building, planning, and assuming tomorrow belonged to them. Noah did not achieve cultural dominance. He simply remained faithful while the world carried on without him. That may be the greater danger, not believing the wrong date, but believing Christ will return someday while quietly arranging our lives as though he has agreed not to interrupt them. So work, build, love your family, defend what is good, but don't confuse the work of your hands with control of history. And don't let failed prognosticators shame you out of the expectation Christ commanded, the blessed hope. No panic, no spreadsheets pretending to be revelation, just faithfulness, readiness, and eyes fixed above the noise. Until the next transmission, stay alert, stay faithful. I'm Don James. He's Data. This is the Shadow Network podcast. And by all means, keep looking up.
We bring the boom. That's what we do. We bring the boom. We bring the boom to you. We bring the boom. We bring the boom to everyone. We bring the boom. Your favorite father and son. Every afternoon on your FYP. We'll be bringing the boom around 3:15. We bring the boom so loud the whole earth shakes. With double chunk chocolate cookies. And chicken bakes. Biceps and triceps bring the boom that everybody deserves. And we call him Big Justice, cause that's what he serves. We bring the happiness and laughter when we enter the room. And we're changing up the world with the boom or doom. We bring the boom.
So that's his 10 steps. Can you believe it? Let's get out of here.
School is online now ahead of the...
This is the one that